to rebuild this economy on a stronger foundation. We passed Wall Street reform to make sure that a crisis like this never happens again. So that these reforms are going to end the era of taxpayer-funded bailouts forever. Reforms that'll stop mortgage lenders from taking advantage of homeowners. Reforms that'll stop credit card companies from hitting you with hidden fees or jacking up your rates without any reason. But we didn't stop there. We started investing again in American research and American technology and homegrown American clean energy, because I don't want solar panels and wind turbines and electric cars of the future built in Europe or Asia. I want them built right here in the United States of America with American workers. To help middle-class families get ahead, we passed a tax cut for 95% of working families. I want to repeat that. We cut taxes for 95% of working families, because if you were listening to the other side, you'd think we raised taxes. But, again, we deal in facts. And the fact is, we cut taxes for 95% of working families. We passed 16 different tax cuts for America's small business owners, who create the majority of jobs in this country. We passed health care reform that will stop insurance companies from denying you coverage or dropping you coverage because you're sick. And by the way, Madison, let me just see a show of hands. How many people are under the age of 26 in this crowd? Every single one of you, when you get out of college, if you have not found a job that offers you health care, you're going to be able to stay on your parents' health care until you're 26 years old, so you don't end up taking the risk of getting sick and being bankrupt. We finally fixed the student loan system so that tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer subsidies that were going to big banks, they were acting as middlemen, and student loan programs were going through these financial intermediaries. They were taking billions of dollars in profits. We said, well, let's cut out the middleman. We'll give the loans directly to students, and that means a million more students are going to be able to take advantage of grants and student loans. And by the way, we also kept a promise I made on the day that I announced my candidacy. We have removed combat troops from Iraq, and we have ended our combat mission in Iraq. Now, that's just some of what we've done. I haven't even mentioned the fact that we signed into laws making sure that we enforce equal pay for equal work, because I think my daughters should be treated just like somebody else's sons. I even mentioned the fact that we have the largest expansion of national service so that young people can tap into their idealism and start working here in this country and around the world to make people's lives better. I haven't talked about the fact that we made sure that tobacco companies can't market their products to children. We have made progress over the last 20 months. And that is the progress that you worked so hard for in 2008. Now, we didn't get everything done. Sometimes people say, well, you know, this item not done, that item well, wait, you know, I've only been here 2 years, guys. You know, if you look at the checklist, we've already covered about 70%. So I figured I need to have something to do for the next couple of years. And look, here's the fact. Here's the fact is that we're not where we need to be, not even close. The hole that we're climbing out of is a deep one. People, I want you to understand the magnitude of what we've gone through. This is deeper than the last 3 recessions combined. Most of the jobs we lost took place before any of our economic policies had a chance to take effect. And on top of that, the middle class had been struggling for more than a decade, and jobs had been getting shipped overseas, and millions of families were still treading water. Millions are still barely able to make their bills or make the mortgage. I hear their stories every day. I read them in just heartbreaking letters that I receive each night. So I understand that people are frustrated. I understand people are impatient with the pace of change. Of course they are. Look, I'm impatient. But I also know this. Now is not the time to lose heart. Now is not the time to give up. We do not quit, and we cannot forget that this nation has been through far worse, and we have come out stronger from war to depression to the great struggle for equal rights and civil rights. We do not quit. In every instance, progress took time. In every instance, progress took sacrifice. Progress took faith. You know, the slaves sitting around a fire singing freedom songs, they weren't sure when slavery would end, but they understood it was going to end. When women were out there marching for the right to vote, they weren't sure when it was going to happen, but they kept on going. When workers were organizing for the right to organize and were being intimidated, they weren't sure when change was going to come, but they knew it was going to come. And I am telling you, Wisconsin, we are bringing about change, and progress is going to come, but you've got to stick with me. You can't lose heart. Change is going to come. Change is going to come for this generation if we work for it, if we fight for it, if we believe in it. The biggest mistake we could make right now is to let disappointment or frustration lead to apathy and indifference. That is how the other side wins. And I want everybody to be clear. Make no mistake. If the other side does win, they will spend the next 2 years fighting for the very same policies that led to this recession in the first place. The same policies that left the middle class behind for more than a decade. The same policies that we fought so hard for to change in 2008. Just look at the agenda the other leaders, the leaders of the other party unveiled last week. They called this Pledge to America. That's what they called it. And in case you're wondering how serious they are about changing Washington, this pledge was actually written with the help of a former lobbyist for AIG and a former lobbyist for ExxonMobil. You can't make this stuff up. This is the truth. Now, the centerpiece of their pledge, their central economic idea, this is it. This is their main idea for growing the economy and dealing with the 8 million jobs that were lost as a consequence of their earlier policies. Their main idea is a $700 billion tax cut for the wealthiest 2% of Americans. Right? So 98% of Americans would never see a dime of this $700 billion. Now, keep in mind, we don't have $700 billion. So we'd have to borrow it. And the party that lectures us on fiscal responsibility wants to borrow another $700 billion to give a tax cut worth an average of $100,000 to every millionaire and billionaire in America. And when you ask them, well, where do they plan to find the $700 billion? Where's this money? Is it lying around? You didn't tell us about this. Where is it? They don't have an answer. But to pay for just a tiny fraction of this tax cut, they want to cut education by 20%. They want to eliminate 200,000 children from an early childhood education program like Head Start. They want to cut financial aid for 8 million college students, including some of the people who are out here today. This is for a tax cut for folks who don't need it and weren't even asking for it. At a time when the education of a country's citizens is the biggest predictor of its economic success, they think it's more important to give another tax break to people who made the Forbes 400 list. Now, I have to ask my Republican friends a question here. Do you think that China is cutting back on education? Do you think that South Korea is making it harder for their citizens to get a college education? These countries aren't playing for second place. And let me tell you something. The United States of America doesn't play for second place either. We play for first place, Wisconsin. We play for first place. This is an economic issue of our generation. And I will not allow politicians in Washington to sacrifice your future on another round of tax cuts that aren't paid for, that we don't need and you can't afford. And that's the choice in this election. That's why you need to be involved. Your future is at stake here. Look, we have a different idea about what the next 2 years should look like. And it's an idea rooted in our belief about how this country was built. We know that government doesn't have all the answers to our problems. We don't believe that government's main role is to create jobs or prosperity. You know, one of the things that the other side's been able to do is to hoodwink a whole bunch of folks all across the country after we had to take emergency measures to clean up their mess to say, look, he's for big government. The steps we took to make sure that the auto industry didn't go down the tubes or the financial system didn't go down the tubes was because they weren't minding the store when they were in charge. It's not because I came in with a big government agenda. I believe government should be lean and efficient, and that's why I've proposed a 3-year spending freeze. That's why I set up a bipartisan fiscal commission to deal with our deficit. But in the words of the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, I also believe that government should do for the people what they can't do better for themselves. I believe in a country that rewards hard work and responsibility, a country where we look after one another, a country where I say I'm my brother's keeper, I'm my sister's keeper. I believe in an America that gave my grandfather the chance to go to college because of the GI Bill. I believe in an America that gave my grandparents the chance to buy a home because of the Federal Housing Authority. I believe in an America that gave their children and grandchildren the chance to fulfill our dreams thanks to scholarships and student loans like some of you are on. That's the America I know. That's the choice in this election. Instead of $700 billion tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, we want to make permanent the tax cuts for middle-class Americans. You deserve a break. Instead of cutting education and student aid, we want to make permanent our new college tax credit that's worth $10,000 of tuition relief for each young person going to 4 years of college. We want to make clear that in good times and in bad times, no young American should have to sacrifice the dream of a college education just because they can't afford it. That's what we believe. That's the choice in this election. If we let the other side take control of Congress, they'll spend the next 2 years fighting to preserve tax breaks for companies that create jobs and profits overseas. Billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies that we lose each year. Over the last 20 months, we've taken the step of closing a lot of these tax loopholes. And over the next 2 years, we're going to fight to give tax breaks to companies that are actually creating jobs here in the United States of America.